Welcome everyone to Global Pills. This is Giovanni Gruni. In the supermarket, you can find many different products. You can use the information on the label of the product to decide whether a specific product is the healthiest choice for you today. But when can food producers, for example, say that the product contains a lot of vitamins or that the ingredients boost your immune system? Why can you read on the label of orange juice that it is a vitamin C rich product, but you don't see this on most oranges? Today, with Dr. Alie de Boer, we will dive into the concept of healthy foods, asking what kind of scientific evidence underlies nutrition and health claims, and discussing why such claims are of interest not just to producers, but also to consumers. Dr. Alie de Boer is assistant professor in nutrition and food law at Maastricht University's campus Venlo. Ali is a nutritional scientist and has specialized in the link between nutrition and food law. As the founder and head of the Food Claims Centre Venlo, she studies how you can scientifically prove that food is legally considered to be safe and healthy. Welcome to Global Pills, Ali.
Thank you.
Why do you think we are all more and more concerned with the food we eat?
Well, there is more and more food available. We have more money to spend. And at the same time, there are also these technological developments that enable food producers to make, fancier products, if you would call them like that. So make products that have specific benefits to us. So when we're focusing more and more on how to stay healthy, and food is an inherent part of that. So there are different developments. It's the technological, it's the economical, and it's the medical perspective, I would say.
What is the reaction of the food business to this growing demand?
A lot of food businesses want to place their product on the market because of potential health benefits. So a lot of businesses are looking for the specific healthy ingredient or healthy combination of ingredients that makes their product very attractive to consumers based on the health perspective. Of course, foods are not just products that you eat because it's healthy, but also because they're tasty. So we see that quite some food businesses try to balance that perspective and try to either focus on a specific target group, such as athletes, who they know, for example, who may benefit from additional protein, but some producers more focus on the general population saying, hey, this is a tasty but also healthy product. And they try to, really advertise health benefits of their products.
Do you see any risks in this?
Yeah, there's always the risk of misinformation. And especially with food, we eat at least 3, let's say, very often 6 times a day. So it's very hard for you personally to distinguish what makes me now more or less healthy, especially the long-term effect. You can't immediately feel that. So there's quite a risk of being presented something, being attracted to a product that you think would be good for you, but you can't really estimate whether it is good for you. So it is really very important to not just see advertisements that are promising you blue skies and a beautiful future, but that those claims are actually something you can trust. So you're not misled by any claims. And the main risk I would say I see with that is that food promises things that a food product could never promise, so that it would treat a disease or something. Legally, that's not allowed because that's making a product a medicine. So especially those risks, promising something you could never obtain with a food product, and especially when it comes to medical treatment of diseases or making sure you don't get a disease, those are the main risks, I would say.
And consumers, are they worried about misleading health claims?
Well, some consumers are, but I would think that quite some consumers are not specifically aware of what's going on. And some consumer organizations are especially a bit concerned to make sure that consumers are not misled. And they really fight for strict laws, but also strict enforcement of legislation, because there is legislation in Europe. So in all European member states, there is a regulation that specifies that you cannot make such misleading claims. But the enforcement also depends a bit between member states, how strict they are in that sense. So in general, there is a law that should protect a consumer from being misled by these false or medical claims. But to what extent it's enforced, that may differ a little bit. So some consumers who have no clue about the fact that there is legislation underlying these health claims, they may mistrust everything because they think, well, it's all advertisement, which is not completely true. And some consumers who know a little bit more about it, who know more about, for example, the legislation, they sometimes are a bit concerned because of, well, enforcement, which may be a bit stricter sometimes.
Is it easy to define when a specific food is healthy?
No, that's a very short answer. No, because as I already said, a food is something you eat at least 3 to 6 times a day. And it's not an isolated food you eat because, well, you said already in the introduction, vitamin C in orange juice, that's just one ingredient in the orange juice that is composed of multiple ingredients. But if you drink that during your breakfast, you probably have, if you would be in the Netherlands, a sandwich next to that as well. So you don't just eat or drink single components. And that's what is making the health effects of food also so difficult to establish, because it's a combined effect of multiple ingredients. And mostly we see that these effects are longer term effects. So it should, for example, help you to be at less risk for the development of coronary heart disease because it keeps your cholesterol in balance. But that's not something I would feel immediately today or in a week. That's a long-term effect that I may benefit from. So that's increasing the difficulty. It's both the number of ingredients and the subtle, very often long-term effects of food that makes it difficult to really estimate very well, both scientifically and in your personal experience, whether something is healthy, yes or no.
Does it mean that foods can be labeled as having specific health claims whenever the producer thinks this is the case?
No. Thankfully, that's not the case. As I already told you, shortly, there is European legislation dealing with nutrition and health claims, as we call them. Nutrition claims are those claims that tell you what's in a product. So it advertises a beneficial ingredient, such as vitamin C. And health claims really tell you something about what a specific ingredient does. So that vitamin C is important for your immune system. And those nutrition and health claims, they need to be backed up by scientific evidence. Only the claims that have been pre-approved, which we call authorized health claims, they can be used by manufacturers. And then they still have to make sure they meet the conditions of use of these specific health claims. And that means that you, for example, have to make sure that if you say that your product is rich in vitamin C, that you can actually get that certain amount of the recommended daily intake within, for example, 1 glass of orange juice, so that you don't need to drink the full pack of orange juice, because that would in the end not be healthy for you. So it's really based on the ingredients that is in your product and whether you meet the conditions of use for using the pre-approved health claim. Only then you can make the claim.
When is it that a producer can claim that its product has a specific health benefit then?
So that is when he or she makes use of a pre-approved claim. So you can, in Europe, we have approximately 300 claims on specific ingredients very often that say that mention a health benefit. So like the vitamin C on the immune system that supports your immune system. For those claims, it has been established what the scientific evidence is underlying that claim, and that claim has been approved as scientifically a sound claim. So we know that vitamin C works like that. So that is one thing to do, that you focus on what are the ingredients in my product and can I use a pre-approved health claim already? The second option is to actually investigate your specific ingredient or your product that contains multiple ingredients and to study it yourself. And that's a very long lengthy process where you need to conduct the scientific studies yourself. You, as an industrial, you need to study your product. You need to specify for what health benefit it would be beneficial, and you compile a scientific dossier. And that scientific dossier is assessed by the European Food Safety Authority, and only when they say, indeed, it's scientifically sound, it's well studied, it's well documented, and we can indeed see that this is a health benefit, then you may be allowed to use your own claim on your specific ingredients.
Why is the European Union relevant in this case?
Well, it's a European law to make sure that both European consumers are not misled, but also to make sure that there is this level playing field within Europe. So if you sell a product in the Netherlands, then it should also be able to be sold under similar circumstances in Spain, in Germany, in every single member state. So it shouldn't be the case that in the Netherlands a product would be criticized because of a health claim that it's using, which is allowed in Spain. So this level playing field, this one internal market is very important. But as said, it's even more important to protect consumers from false and misleading claims for the European government. And what they therefore have done is they have said, you can file for a claim at the European Commission. So you submit your evidence to the European Commission, but the European Commission is a political body, so they can't assess the science. So they ask the opinion of the European Food Safety Authority, who is the risk assessor, who is the scientific assessor. They really dive into the scientific dossier that has been compiled by the industrial, and they give advice to the European Commission. And the European Commission, based on the advice of the European Food Safety Authority, then says, okay, you can use this claim, yes or no.
What is the European Food Safety Authority?
The European Food Safety Authority, they are an independent scientific agency within Europe. And we have quite a lot of these independent agencies in Europe, which are composed of experts that deal with a specific topic. And in the case of the European Food Safety Authority, it's foods. So every time the European Union or European member states want to do something with food safety measures or food policy issues, they can get technical and scientific advice from the European Food Safety Authority. You have different experts who work at the European Food Safety Authority, but they also make a lot of use of experts that come from member states and that are panel members. So for a few years, they give specific advice from their expertise about, for example, pesticides or about nutrition and health claims, for example, or allergies or anything you can think of related to food. That's where the technical and scientific advice comes from EFSA.
Is the European Food Safety Authority very selective in allowing producers to claim that a product has a specific health benefit?
That's a very interesting question, because there are not too many claims that have been allowed to be used on European on products within the European Union. And quite some people say that EFSA may have been too strict in their assessment, in their risk assessment. But we also know from studying the scientific dossiers that quite some dossiers didn't contain very good scientific evidence. So whether they have been selective, well, they were asked to critically assess dossiers. So they had quite a bit of a struggle to clearly identify how they should do that. So it took quite some time before they had a good procedure in place, and they were overloaded with claims. So over 44,000 claims were submitted, and in the end, those came from different member states. So combined, it was up to over 5,000 claims. But then still, it's 5,000 claims that address specific ingredients with specific health benefits. So it was a lot of work. And in that same time, the procedure wasn't too clear. So the idea was that in 2012, when the first batch of claims was authorized, it was only a very very minor part of the submitted claims that was authorized. Only 222 claims were authorized. So a lot of people were like, whoa, is EFSA that strict? And why are they so strict? But now, a few years later, when we critically look into these dossiers, it's not just that they were strict, which they needed to be because the scientific evidence was not really always up to standard. It was also a lot of claims that were not sufficiently supported. So it took a long time before they managed to get through all of these claims. And now looking back, we also understand way better how the procedure works. So it's also more clear for a food producer, if they want to make a claim, how they should compile the dossier.
What are the main issues you are trying to solve in your research?
I try to study how we use scientific evidence in different food laws and in different legislative purposes. So, for example, for this nutrition and health claim regulation, we try to understand when is the scientific dossier good enough to actually prove a health benefit of a food or a food ingredient? And why do we use specific methods for that? And how do you compile this dossier? You have to realize that the development in nutritional science and a lot of related biological sciences, these developments go very quick. But the risk assessors also have to have the evidence available that they can actually say, okay, this is a good testing strategy to prove whether something is healthy, yes or no. And we have often relied for nutritional effects, for health effects of nutrition, we've often relied on more the pharmaceutical perspective. So testing whether one specific ingredient makes one specific biomarker change a lot. But we also know at the same time that these health effects of nutrition are probably more subtle. But how can you study that in a good and meaningful way? And what scientific methods can you use for that? So those are the things we're trying to understand better to allow for new developments and new methodologies to, for example, for safety studies, also reduce the amount of animal tests that are needed, and for health effects to give you a better and more comprehensive picture of what is actually a healthy food and how you can prove that with scientific evidence.
We conclude the episode asking our guest what is the main challenge in their area of interest.
What is the main challenge? Well, I think the challenge is that quite often these nutritional scientists and the people who study food law or who work with food law don't always speak the same language, and they don't always understand each other's needs. And I think that challenge also brings me to my research interest to try and bridge the gap, in a sense, between science and food law. So for me, that's one thing that makes it very interesting as well. But I do hope that this gap is more and more bridged, and that we really try to make sure that the scientific evidence that is compiled is up to standards, and that also newly developed ways of assessing health effects and assessing food safety are well appreciated by those who work with food law and who really have to study the scientific evidence from the legal perspective as well. So I really hope we gain more and better understanding, that these fields are better connected in the end, and that we both can protect consumers in an improved way and make sure that innovation can actually be stimulated throughout the EU.
Thank you for contributing to Global Pills, Ali. Is there a way our listeners can get in touch with you if they want to know more?
Yeah, sure. They can always send me an email. You can find me on social media. And if you want to reach out to me, feel free to contact me through my email address at Maastricht University.
Thank you for listening to Global Pills. If you liked this episode, please click subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all main podcasting platforms. You can get in touch with me or propose yourself as a guest, sending an email to globalpillspodcast@gmail.com. We are also on Twitter @globalpillspod, on Instagram @GruniGlobal, Facebook and LinkedIn.